to block off, and will significantly reduce the number of people to come in. And we know our group fitness participants, when they're ready to come back, they will have a bad experience if they get there and they cannot participate. We have all had to turn someone away in the cycling studio, right? So we need to take what we've learned from cycling studios or equipment capacity-based classes in the past, and we're going to have to use the same reservation. If you don't have one yet, you're going to need a reservation system for every single class that you offer, and you're going to need it for quite a while. And part of that is just going to be peace of mind for your participant to know that they are protected, right? And that you're keeping that in mind as you're letting people come back in. And it needs to be light. It needs to be easy user interface, simple, but you're going to have it. So that would be first. There's a whole host of things we could talk about, right, Janice, with regards to capacity, but I'll leave it there. The second thing, obviously, is going to revolve around equipment. The group fitness studio is notoriously known as one of the dirtiest places in the health club because it gets used constantly. We have so much equipment. It's packed into every crevice, every corner. There are dust bunnies floating around when the fans start going. So one, you're going to have to clean up before you go in. But two, when we think about equipment, the first thing I would suggest you do is take an audit of the equipment that you do have and separate it into two piles. One, what's easy to clean and keep clean moving forward, and two, what's not so easy to keep clean moving forward. And straight away, what I'm calling phase one, you're going to have to just eliminate equipment that is not easy to keep clean. Whether that means instituting a protocol where they have to bring it themselves, for example, mats, or if it means, hey, instructors, this is off limits. And I would suggest, like, if it's off limits equipment, you need to get it out of your room, put it somewhere else so they are not tempted to utilize it, because then you're going to open yourself up to liability if you're not cleaning it because you told them not to use it and they do use it, right? So we got to think about that. And I know that's challenging for instructors because we've become very toy heavy, but they've been trying to do it for the last 6 weeks if they're doing virtual. So I think we should be fine, but you've got to put those mandates out pretty quickly so instructors can prepare if that's an issue. And then, of course, we'll talk more about like spacing out classes so that you have time to clean this equipment in between classes, because it's not going to be enough in morning and night. They're going to expect that it's clean in between every single use. And then finally, I think a really big bucket that I haven't heard as much talk about is around instructor safety. We've got to make them, they're the first people we need to make feel comfortable, because if they're not comfortable coming back, then we don't have anyone to service the people that want to come back. And I know I personally have gotten a lot of messages of concern from instructors about, what does this mean for me? So things to consider: a microphone, which hope you have one for your instructor. OSHA regulations, whole nother conversation. But we really need to be mindful about they need their own windscreen. And after the windscreen is taken off, it's not enough to just switch windscreens, right? You've got to clean off the head. And if you can, I would highly suggest having multiple headsets. Does that make sense? So you don't necessarily need multiple microphones, but we need to be able to switch it off, have their own fanny packs. They can't have anyone else's tune belt. And then those of you that have been to conferences probably have seen our belt packs. And these AV guys put condoms on them. I know that sounds ridiculous, but condoms are going to be really, really helpful. So you slip them over the transmitter, and then the instructor can take that off and discard it and put another one on. And that's just another level of protection. But we're really going to have to be mindful about wiping down things that we've never thought about before, wiping down the stereo keys, the clipboard, anything that instructors touch. We also need to ensure that we have some kind of protocol around that cleanliness. So those are my big three. I mean, there's so many more, but capacity and reservation systems, equipment choice, audit it, get rid of some, get your instructors ready to do it with less and figure out how to clean it, and then the instructor safety.
Love it. Those are great. They're great tips. You know, let me ask you this, and because it came up on our last Zoom call and we weren't even talking about this, but Fabio Camana actually mentioned it, and he said he didn't think that we should be running the fans because they're kind of circulating those germs. How do you guys feel about that?
I am not a health expert, so I'm going to leave that to them. But it's
okay. Let's get the CDC on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say, I think this message in the site.
And imagine not having, that's like, okay. And you know, this whole government mandate, and then how many people in, and like, again, this is unprecedented for them. It's unprecedented for the governors. I mean, what? I don't want to say, what do they know? But, so it's all quite interesting and new. So, Erica, why don't you let us know how you feel about all this safety protocols?
Thank you. So that's totally, am I muted? Let me see. Hold on. I might be muted. No. Okay.
No, we can.
That is totally a perfect segue, Janice, because what Shannon said is, I'll leave it to the public health people, the question about the fan. And because I come from a legal background and my expertise in working online for since 2011 is communication. And so my answer to that question is, we don't know the answer to that, but people are working on it. So the first thing that I would say is, think about what you're really good at as an instructor, as a business owner, especially us GroupEx instructors. That's not true. Personal trainers too. We're great at asking questions. We're really, really good at it. We're not always so good at listening to the answer. And I think right now we need to put our listening ears on to everything we can listen to. And we need to inform ourselves about how to ask the right people the right question. Right? So, if I want something from my husband, I'm not just going to go to him and blurt out whatever it is I want. I'm going to form my question in a way so I know I'm getting the information that I want. So I would say, as you're thinking about this, first of all, think, who does make the decision? So if you are a gym owner, you have several layers of government that you have to look at, right? You have to look at, yes, what the federal government is saying, but they don't have the last word. You have to look at what the state is saying. They don't have the last word. You've got your county, you've got your city, you've got the person that owns your building that you need to ask questions of. You've got your insurance company that you need to ask questions of. And I think the great thing that Janice, that you said about, the fact that nobody knows anything, it's not scary. It's really cool because we have this opportunity as instructors and teachers and gym owners and conference havers. We are the ones that can tell them. And I have to tell you, I am a little disappointed when I saw the news about the federal government getting lobbied to put gyms on the list of early openers. Yeah, that was disappointing to me because I feel like that was a huge voice that got listened to, but I think it's only because the rest of us weren't really saying anything. So I just found something that I think is really great news, and that's a county here in Colorado who has issued these protocols. And Janice, I sent these to you, so you've got them, so you can share them with everybody. But it's basically, one is called Best Practices for Keeping Your Employees Safe. One is called Best Practices for Reopening. And then the other one is Best Practices Guidelines Checklist. And it's not a ton of mandates. A lot of it comes from questions that they got asked by local businesses. So I think in terms of if you are that fitness instructor and your gym is like, we're opening tomorrow, and you're thinking, what about the fans? Like Shannon said, what about the microphone? Like Janice, like you said, what about the boot camp? And if they aren't giving you answers to those questions, there is a regulatory agency that is responsible for making sure that you get those questions answered. So like in Colorado, it would be the Department of Regulatory Agencies, right? I could Google DORA. You guys can all do Google Department of Regulatory Agencies wherever you are, and you will find all the layers of people that are there to protect you and help you answer exactly these questions. So really my 2 cents is ask everyone you can think of. Know why you're asking. If you're asking out of fear, take a deep breath and recognize that you have a ton of power if you are smart enough to ask the right questions. So don't let fear stop you, right? Just like when you were in 2nd grade, there's no stupid questions. There aren't. They're all good questions. It's just a matter of figuring out who to ask.
That's great. We'll definitely, I'll in our follow-up email that I'll give to you in the next couple of days, everybody who's on the call, I will include that. And one of the questions that's in the chat is about cleaning the floors and about masks and about, will staff be required to, how about gloves and masks? And I think that kind of, it's like you're saying, like we've got to ask those questions. And, you know, I just saw somebody on Facebook say, yeah, we're starting back up, but my instructors are going to wear masks. Well, I'm not quite sure how an instructor can wear a mask if she's motivating and teaching and talking, but so I don't know.
Yeah.
So good questions. Yeah, that's what I just said, Jessica. How can you teach and wear a mask? But won't gym owners have to increase their insurance coverage? I don't know. You know, I don't know if they will or not. I mean, I would hope that the insurance companies will be kind to us, right? And give us more coverage, but not charge us more. I don't know.
And Janice, I think let me also just say, just like you and I were talking about the other day, ask your insurance company that question. If you're sitting there and you're worried about it, like literally on this call, pick up the phone right now. If you haven't talked to your insurance company, call them right now. That's your homework.
Right. Great. All right, Dan, what do you have to say about all this?
Well, I don't have a lot to add. Erica covered it pretty well. I would say you do need to talk to your insurance agent. I know a lot of fitness studios were sort of surprised when they found out their insurance didn't cover them to train online, didn't cover them to train virtual, didn't cover them to train over FaceTime. And they didn't have that conversation. So you definitely need to have that conversation about workman's comp issues. If you ask a fitness instructor or trainer to teach and they get COVID, right, what's your insurance going to do with that? So you definitely need to know. This is where I think a lot of businesses have discovered having a local insurance agent who you can have lunch or coffee with really helps. Because if you call some corporate entity and you're number 150 on hold, you know, they might get back to you like next Thursday. And so I've been thankful that I have a local banker, I have a local insurance agent, and I see them every Wednesday now via Zoom instead of in person. So I don't know the answers to some of those things. I don't know the answer to should we wear a mask, should we wear gloves? I've talked to some ICU personnel, and their view on it is the vast majority of your staff won't know how to wear a mask correctly, so it actually will increase their risk.
Right.
So I don't know the answer. You're going to have to do some homework and research. I don't know how people could work out with a mask on. I mean, I can barely survive going to the grocery store with a mask on. I know I couldn't work out very well with a mask on. I would be ripping the thing off so that I could catch my breath. Well, now I've just undone whatever protection I had. So I don't know what the rules are going to be, though. Some states, I have a feeling, are going to require us to provide masks to people wanting to work out. And then, of course, how do we control that, right? If you're working out, you have to have a mask on. So there's going to be a lot of unknowns. I think every state's going to have slightly different rules. Indiana, where I am, has said gyms can reopen May 4th. Of course, they may move that date next week, but they have to be limited to 10 people, including your staff. Well, that's a challenge, right? Now, we can work around that because we're a personal training studio. It means 3 trainers, 7 clients, and we've got to make sure we're scheduled correctly. But that's Indiana. I don't know what your state rule is going to be. Your state rule might not be a per person. Ohio, talked to a studio owner yesterday that they're talking about a per person based on square footage, right? So now somebody has to do the calculation. Well, you're allowed 1 person for every 100 square feet, right? I'm like, well, who's doing the math on that? But there are going to be different rules in different states. I have no idea, Shannon, how large clubs with large fitness, group fitness are going to do if the state says it's 10 people, right? I mean, that's going to be a real challenge for larger clubs, a real challenge. One of the things we're doing for my studio is a no-touch infrared thermometer. And so literally I point it at you from a couple feet away. I can get a read on your temperature. And if you read above 99.5, you can't come in today and you can't work today, right? So my trainers can't come slightly sick. I see somebody's asking the brand of thermometer. I don't remember. But when it's like $59. If you Google no touch thermometers, there's 3 or 4 different brands. Now I had a trainer yesterday say, well, yeah, but you can have COVID and not have a fever. Of course. Sure. Right. it's not foolproof. It's just all I'm saying to my clientele is we're not letting anyone in that has a noticeable, measurable fever, right? So that's just one thing that we can do. We are going to have mandatory hand washing. We have 6 sinks. Fortunately, we have a lot of sinks. So for 10 people allowed in at a time, we can actually enforce mandatory hand washing. But yeah, beyond that, I think we're going to be looking to our county health department and our state guidelines to see what some of the rules are. It's definitely an interesting time, and I would say I don't have any of the answers, right? Because I don't even know what the rules are going to be come next week. They're probably going to be different.
As you speak, you probably got a new email, right? So it changes, but like when this whole thing started, like it was just changing by the hour. And you said 10, and I you know, I've heard 50, and again, it is different from state to state. And what you said about, you know, if you don't have a fever, doesn't necessarily. One of the questions was, should we be tested? And it looks like Delaney said, you know, we will be taking temps of all our staff and members before they enter the club when we open for phase 1. So, and again, it's not foolproof either, but the more precautions you take, the better your staff will feel, the better your members will feel, the less liability you'll have. The safer, it's not foolproof. I think one of the important things is waiting till it's time. And I know that's really challenging because us in the fitness industry, you know, a lot of people are virtual. They're still, you know, getting a paycheck, you know, still making money. But some of us who are not able to teach and gym owners, like it's tough. But so we're just looking at all these things, and it's a very challenging time. So yeah, I'm just looking at all these chats and seeing if we can get anything else in. Let's lead right into Dan, and you keep going. So what safety precautions do you think owners, managers, and coordinators should pass on to their staff? You pretty much already covered a lot of that, but if there's anything else you have to say about, you know, how you're guiding your staff, are you going to have regular meetings? And you have a small staff, I think, in your facility, right?
Yeah, let somebody else go first.
Okay.
Zoom kills your phone battery. I've gone from 50 to 3%. So I'm switching to my laptop. I'll be right back.
Okay. So sounds good. Technology, right? We all know about that. Erica or Shannon? Yeah. How are we going to communicate with our owners, managers, and coordinators about and what we're going to say to our staff and how we're going to, you know, get that word out?
Yeah, I think I want to go a step back to go forward, because I think sometimes we have so little information to share, yet so much information to share, and it all is predicated on a timeline that we don't know. So that's the first thing I want to get there. There's a really interesting article I think we should share with everyone and look at what's happening in Beijing. It was forwarded to me yesterday, and they're actually going through this where they opened when they thought it was safe, and they were a lot more cautionary than we have been. They were not phase 1. So they waited a very long time to reopen, and they're already closing again. And I think, I'm not saying that to scare us or fear, like exactly, not really the point of that message, but rather to say we do have to take all this into account and all these unknowns, and not just our unknowns, but everyone's unknown about the disease and the impact, and if or when people are going to come back to us, whether it's founded fear or unfounded fear, and determine if the ROI is there. Because the one thing it mentions in this Beijing article is they're not shutting down because tons of people are getting sick. That is happening, but it's not their major deciding factor. It's that it's a bad business proposition. The money is just not there. So for example, especially with bigger studios, right? You take an Orange Theory who has high rent, and they have to get 24 to 36 people into every class, 7 to 10 hours a day to make a return on their investment. Whether it's 10 people can come in or it's 15 people can come in, the money just doesn't work out when you factor in everything you need to. So that's something to really be mindful of. I mean, that's going to be the first decision, right? Is when is it right? Not just when the country or your city or your state tells you can go back, but when is it going to be right for your business financially, right? Risk reward. And that leads me to the second piece, which is if you've been doing streaming or you've been doing video on demand, it's really real that if we can, and I am with you, Erica, like it frustrates me that we were able to lobby the federal government to suggest that we need to be in phase 1 out of the goodness of our hearts, because people need to get back to working out because that's for the health of the world. It is, but we are so egocentric and have such myopic thinking if we think that coming into a gym is the only way we can support them. Whether that is streaming, whether it is video on demand, or giving them advice and information and education, and empowering them to do it in a place where they feel safe and comfortable. I could get on a soapbox. I'm not. It's Friday night. I need a cocktail. But let's go back to communication. I don't know. This makes me sick to my stomach because I want people to come back to gyms and I want gyms to thrive, but I also want to make sure this is a turning point for this industry to realize that we are better than just offering what we have to offer inside of a gym. There are other ways to do it. Anyway, moving on. Communication. I do think, one, we are stuck. We need to talk to our HR departments first, because if you furloughed your instructors, if you furloughed your team, there are rules about when and if you can talk to them. So I want to put that over here because I'm not a lawyer. But once you do, it is going to be really, really important, especially, again, I'm going to talk through the group fitness lens, because we have varied levels of engagement from our staff on a good day. And right now, all of our lovely instructors are now at home trying to homeschool 17.2 children and keep themselves sane and cook and do laundry and do the dishes. So we're going to have to really think about how to re-engage them in a way that's meaningful, that's quick to the point, but we are going to have to document things. And I know as group fitness managers, we typically like to express ourselves verbally, and we like to see people face to face, and we like to do meetings, and we like to add a girls. We are going to have to get into doing SOPs about what the expectations are. Find a time to meet people. It can be a Zoom call, record that Zoom call, but you can't just put it out like we do normally and hope that they get it and hope for the best. There is going to be have to be some kind of verification of consumption of that information, understanding of that information, and then how you're going to implement it. So I think that's going to be what we all say for the next hour. I don't have all the answers, but it's going to have to be bigger and better than we typically communicate with our staffs in the beginning. And then we're going to need to keep that going and check up on people. So we might have to be a bigger presence in the clubs in the beginning to make sure these protocols are being followed. So that would be my 2 cents, or 27 cents.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. Janice, do you mind if I follow Shannon?
Yeah. Good, go for it. Yes,
we should all have cocktails next time with us when we do this.
Yes.
And 2, Shannon, you almost said this thing that I have been saying to all of my little tiny, fitness studios that I've been working with here in Denver, 2 of which were slated to open the last week in February and couldn't. I've been saying over and over again, your business is not closed. No one has closed your business. Your building is closed. And I think it's so important. Janice, you and I were talking about all of this innovation, and Shannon just said the same thing, all the Zooming and the streaming and all that stuff that we all had in the back of our heads. I should start an online Zumba, like whatever. But guess what? You just did. So many people just did, and you didn't overthink it, and you didn't, you jumped in and you were like, I bet I can teach an aqua class in my bathtub, or whatever it was. That I see all of this going on, and I'm going to start to cry. It's you guys, you're glorious. It's just amazing, the innovation that's going on. So I would say keep doing that. Absolutely. Ask all the questions, learn all the safety, envision what you want your building to look like, but don't stop doing all the business that you're doing, even if you're not making money. And I know it's so hard. Like you're getting on that whatever Zoom call and you've got 20 people that are coming to class and you're counting, you're like, oh my gosh, 20 people, even if they were on ClassPass, that's $15 a head. And you're like, you got to let all of that go and recognize that you are cranking that know, like, and trust factor like nobody's business right now. People are scared, and you're their anchor, just like your building was their anchor. Like, you're their anchor. So I know we're supposed to be talking about how to keep your employees safe. I do think there is going to be a very interesting thing that Shannon just alluded to about bringing instructors back. And so I think that communication thing that you're having with them is also honoring, because a lot of them are going to feel like, I don't need you anymore. I just Zoomed 50 people. And it's going to be very important for the people that just Zoom taught 50 people to remember that as soon as the building gets over, they're going to be like, bye. So it's that balance between making sure you're encouraging each other in the fitness world to keep doing what you're doing. And also at the same time, remember, there's a reason that people want to be in their buildings. There's a reason that we're all devastated that we can't be in Janice's pool, right? We want to be together in the same, with our energy occupying the same space. So I think it's going to be a really interesting balance. And I think, just like Shannon said, I think a lot of really, really good stuff is coming. We're innovators, we're fighters, right? Every single one of us is like, don't quit to our students. So we'll say that to them.
Erica, you and I talked about, so wanting that we do. Well, of course we want, the majority of us don't want to stay on Zooms forever. Some of you may, and that's okay. But the human connection, that's, I think, why most of us got into personal training or teaching, is because we love the interaction. We love the human connection. We love to motivate, inspire. And yes, you can do that. You can do that online. But for me, I didn't realize so much what a people person I was. And that is what I miss more than anything. And so Eric and I talked about, like, I've got all my most of my students' emails, and like once or twice a week, I send them a pep talk, and I tell them how I'm doing, and I ask them how they're doing. And I teach aqua, so I can't really do online aqua, but I've been making little goofy videos that are certainly not top quality, but they love me. They don't care, right? So stay in communication with them, keep in contact with them, and whatever way you can. And that's not always doable if you work at a big club and you don't have their contact information. But we're going to lead into what we do when we do come back. A lot of our students are going to be, especially those of us who work with older adults, even though some of them said they've been taking walks, and Dan and I talked about how some of the older adults, they're not even playing bingo now. But so just remember, when we get back, they may not be, or like if they have been doing walks or been doing different workouts, now they're going to come back to, say, your aqua class or say your boot camp. And so that's a different cross training that they haven't been used to. So we've got to ease them into it so that we keep them a different kind of safe, a different kind of health. We don't kill them right away. So we've got to think about those kind of things as well. They're going to be most likely going to be fairly deconditioned from the usual workout that you left them with. Maybe not for some of you who've been doing the same Zoom workouts that you did when you were with them, but most likely a lot of it will be different. So Dan, we'll go right into you, because you and I discussed that, and because you work with older adults and you're the one who talked about them perhaps have been more sedentary than usual, and being cautious and mindful with that.
Yeah, well, I think there's two things to think about. One, some states are going to continue to ban older adults, right? Or they're going to say, if you're over 60 or 65, still stay home. My average age client is 64. So I'm already at a challenge, because if the state says, well, if you're over 65, we really want you to just continue to stay home for another month or 2 months. So we're going to have that challenge to deal with. I actually surveyed my clients in the last 24 hours because I wanted to be able to give you some information. And about 1 out of 3 of them said, I'm going to stay home for another 2 months because I have high blood pressure, or I'm at great risk, or my spouse has had a stroke, or, it's either they have a health condition or someone they're caring for does. So they're not going to venture out, but I will continue to train on Zoom, right? I mean, they're emphatically behind us. They're not quitting. They're not dropping out. So we have to realize, even though we may be enthusiastic about reopening, whatever date that is, right? It might be June 1st for you. It might be May 15th. I don't know when it will be. Your clients may not be enthusiastic, and they may not come back for another month or 2. And one of the things we're already preparing for, Janice, is the in-between. And even long-term, we may be continuing to do virtual training.
And I know some trainers in Florida are like, man, I should have been doing this for my snowbirds all these years, right? Because guess what? I reopen in June and half my clientele goes north for the summer.
Right.
It's a double whammy for them, right? So now I'm in position to continue to train clients online. So we have to be ready for it looking very different. It's not like everyone's just going to come back the day we reopen. And so we have to be prepared for that. So the other thing I would add that we were just talking about staff, over communicate. Your staff has no idea what's going on if you're not telling them, right? And so I'm having regular staff meetings via Zoom. We're talking about all sorts of issues. What sort of issues are you having training on Zoom? What clients have gone missing? What do clients need from us? Everything. Even down to t-shirt sales, right? I mean, we're selling t-shirts for local businesses to our clientele, but they need to know what's happening if they're still working for you. And if they're not still working for you, if they've been laid off, you probably still should have some updates because they're seeing things, right? Oh, gyms may be allowed to reopen. Well, what does that mean for us? So, I mean, I found out my manager can't come back to work, and she doesn't know when she'll be able to come back to work, because her childcare options are gone. She has no childcare for May and June, so she's not sure when she'll be able to return to work. So those sorts of communications need to be happening, because you can't just expect when you reopen that all your staff can even return, because guess what? They're now full-time teachers, some of them, right? They have no childcare. They have a completely different life than they had before, so we have to be aware of that. So one of the questions I keep asking my staff, what do you need from me, and what do you need to know from me?
That's great. That's really important, and we need to be more sensitive and more mindful than we ever had before with our staff, because I don't want to say these are unprecedented times again, but but yeah, that's great. We have a couple. I don't know if anybody on board can answer. And again, this is probably like find out. But someone asked about types of cleaning products. Sometimes, does anyone have any advice on type of cleaning products? And I think that kind of depends. Are we talking about cleaning the barbells? Are we talking about cleaning, the sinks? Are we talking about, so anybody want to step in on that?
I can only speak because I was eavesdropping on a conversation. My husband is in the insurance world for local governments, and I was listening to him on a call, and he said there are realtors associations and janitors associations who all are developing protocols around this. But then I got to go back to what Shannon said earlier, which is we're not in public health. So I would say your first resource is your county public health department, and ask them. And if they don't have a protocol, help them figure it out. What would make you feel safe? If you have to go pick up a barbell that somebody just licked, what would make you feel safe about it?
Erica, what's are licking barbells?
I know.
What kind of gym are you running?
What? Whoa, that's a whole different topic there.
That'll
be cocktails. That'll be the cocktails and the licking barbell Zoom. That's next week.
I'm the mom of boys. Don't everybody's boys, they're on everything. Pretend your kid just touched it.
Yeah. Do weird things. Yeah. Yeah. Well, someone in the chat mentioned how, that members are not great about cleaning the equipment. So I assume that these managers are going to need extra staff to keep an eye on that type of, to just enforce that. You can't really rely on other people and members being as safe as you want them to be, being as health conscious and clean as you want them to be. So like what extra kind of staff, what extra kind of cleaning do you have to have come in? That's a whole. Well,
I would just add, Janice, I don't think any of us are disinfectant experts or sanitizer experts, but you do need to do a little research. I mean, I started learning about it back 1st of March, right? So we set some protocols in place, and we looked at what levels of disinfectants. I mean, you can do some research. You want to make sure your disinfectant is listed that it kills viruses. I mean, you can buy a disinfectant that does not even list that it kills viruses. And so then you're like, well, wait a minute, we're disinfecting stuff, but it doesn't actually list coronaviruses and flu strains and those sorts of things. So you want to make sure, and then don't go crazy, because I've talked to some ICU friends, and they're like, you don't want to use a hospital grade disinfectant. That's for cleaning up blood spills and bodily fluids, and you don't want to then be touching that stuff. And your staff isn't even trained to deal with those chemicals, let alone breathe them in, right? So we do have to be careful not going, too crazy. Just make sure you do some homework that the disinfectant you're using, one, is safe for you to be using and applying, and then two, does kill viruses. And then I would add, basically we have to realize, and I've seen some people do different things on this, we have to realize it's going to be really difficult to keep every surface clean. And we're also going to have some policies and some signs. Our clients are terrible about putting their hands all over the countertops, right? It's just sort of a natural. They hang out at the front counter. They hang out at the locker check-in counter. We have cubby lockers, and their hands are all over everything. So we're going to have new policies about, stay 3 feet from the counters, and don't set your stuff down, and don't put your hands here, because there's no way I'm going to be able to chase Janice around all her workout, everything she's touched, right? So we're going to have to limit that. And then I noticed someone in the comments commenting already on Georgia, right? Just because they've said gyms can reopen doesn't mean gyms can actually reopen, right? Like, I don't think it's productive for a large health club that runs group fitness and swimming and all sorts of things to reopen with a policy of 10 people, if that's what the state puts on them, right? It's like, well, which 2 employees are you going to tell come to work? And oh, by the way, they have to police which 8 people are allowed in at a time. It's going to be a miserable job, right? Shannon's going to show up to work out and be like, sorry, Shannon, you can't come in till 2 people leave, right? Now Shannon's going to be like, all right, how do I quit my gym membership? I mean, it's just not going to be productive, I think, until we get to a 50-person or 25-person for some of the bigger gyms, right? Now, for my smaller studio, we'll be able to manage the 10-person rule, but for some others, it won't be tenable.
Yeah, it's going to be different, right, for the bigger health clubs. And I think going back to the staffing thing, Dan, you hit on such a good point. I want to remind people on the call, if you're a group fitness manager in a bigger box health club, there's always been issues around compensation for instructors. We tend to pay them per class, and that may or may not be 100% legit when it comes to HR. So if we are insisting that group fitness instructors are now taking on cleaning protocols in between class, we need to address with upper management and HR about fair compensation for that work, and or put some other protocol in place that has someone else coming in to do that work if you can't figure out the compensation piece. And the one thing, I'm not sure, I alluded to it earlier, but I want to make sure I highlight it. I just did a webinar about scheduling. We talked for an hour about things we're going to need to consider with regards to scheduling in this new world, not just because of safety protocols, but also based on expectations and the experiences of our consumers while they've been at home. But the biggest thing we're going to have to remember is we cannot, Janice, you said earlier, we can't have back-to-back classes. So minimum of 15 minutes. Most people are suggesting at least 30 to actually be able to get everyone out. And if you've been to Target during this whole thing, or Whole Foods, like, there are clear in and out signs. Mm-hmm. 2 doors. If you don't have 2 doors, you need the things on the floor that show them where to go. And it can't be, even I know some clubs always have had 10 or 15 minutes between, but you can't let body pump linger and talk to the instructor while Zumba's walking in and setting up their stuff. There's going to have to be some serious policing of that. And I keep coming back to this. I'm trying to give protocols in case you do open, or you're asked to open, or when you do come back. But to Dan's point, and Erica, I think, you've echoed this as well. Is it going to be a good experience with all of these things? I mean, not just for the member, but for the instructor, the staff member that has to police all this. Because I know how irritated my husband gets having to wait outside Whole Foods to get groceries, and that's a necessity. Can you imagine if, like, you come to do body pump and you can't get in, or you come to get on an elliptical for 45 minutes, you have to wait outside for half an hour? Like, I think we need to think bigger picture than just let's open to get the money and get people back in because we need them to be healthy. And what is the experience? And is there a better way we could usher them back into this new normal that takes care of them as a whole person, and not just the person that used to rent our equipment by the hour? So that's just always what I keep coming back to with my suggestions and advice.
Well, exactly. We want to open, but we want it to be a good experience. So if it's not going to be a good experience, we're going to end up losing them, whether we lose them to their health or we lose them to the frustration. So we want to be super ready with those numbers and those answers and really have everything in place. So and for you smaller studios and smaller gyms and smaller group training, you've probably got a little easier get in there. Just really be so mindful about like a circuit in a small group. It's going to be really hard to do a rotate kind of, circuit kind of situation in a really safe environment, because you're not going to have time to clean that equipment in between. But so again, we want to get back, but we want it to be a positive experience for the instructors, for the trainers, for the members. And one thing that I thought of when Dan was talking about touching the counters and everything, it's like, how about handling money back and forth and even credit cards? Although all those little million things that we have to think about, that managers have to think about, and training those front desk people, being really mindful of your turnover, because front desk sometimes tends to have some turnover, and making sure when somebody new comes in, this is a whole new ball game with training and communication for all types of staff. So let's see if we've got any. There's lots of chats here. I can when I send the follow up, there's some articles being being shared and everything. And when we do the follow up, I can follow up with any of these questions that we might be able to answer later. We can follow up and send everybody these articles that people are sharing, and the ones that Shannon talked to us about, and the one you shared with me from Ursa. And I think we talked about a lot of those, we talked about how will your club limit the people, and how will you enforce social distancing and machines, and just on and on. So I would like to just see if any of our speakers have any final thoughts, so that we can keep this call just under an hour. And so final thoughts from Erica. Let's start with you, Erica.
I'll hold myself to 2 sentences. One is, we don't have all the answers, but the answers are probably on this call. I really feel like if we can stay in communication with all of the stakeholders, keep telling them what we need, keep talking to your clients, ask them what they had for dinner, ask them what they're doing. Do not ask them if they think you should open, but just keep talking. The answers are here. We have them. I'm looking at the chat. I'm listening to Shannon and Dan and Janice, and we have the answers. So keep talking to each other, and keep talking to the people who you think have the power, because we can make it happen right.
Great. Shannon?
Yeah, I love what Erica said. And I would say the thing that is the bright spot in all of this for me, and I think that we should revel in, is for the first time, I feel like in the history of this industry, we're all in the same boat, rowing in the same. And that's pretty powerful. And if we can continue to adopt this new fascination with an and versus an or mentality, like you can do this and you can do that. You can take my live classes and you can Zoom with me, or you can do my classes and go to Dan's studio, versus feeling like we're in competition for the same people. Because there's been a whole new world open to the 85% that we've not yet been able to get into health club studios or into traditional fitness. They have been experimenting with this. And I think, this industry could catapult into the next stratosphere if we really do, adopt this and versus or mentality. So that's my hope. And I'm really encouraged by all these webinars that these organizations are doing, that's bringing so many people together, and realizing just, what a great think tank we have out there. We work together, everything will be better. So thanks for putting this on, Janice.
Thank you. Dan?
Yeah, thanks for doing this, Janice. I think these things are critical because not one of us has the right answer, and every state's going to be slightly different. I just shared in the chat a YouTube video that was helpful to me a day or two ago. So Rick Mayo, who's a leader in the industry, Alloy Fitness, his personal training studio, he says is opening on Monday, right? Georgia gave the go-ahead to open today. He's like, we're not open on a Friday. He's like, we'll open on Monday. He gives a 50-minute YouTube interview with another fitness owner similar to what we just did, and he talks about the ramifications. And he said, you know what? Only 1/3 of our clients are coming back. So we're going to keep it really small and low key. He's a small group personal training studio. So I would just encourage people, what I always say, Janice, is success leaves clues. So let's watch other people open and see how they do it, see what they do well, see what doesn't work. Let's hear. I think it's okay to be patient. The last thing you want to do is open too fast and have then
To close again.
We got to close again, or your clients
Or
are
get
like,
somebody sick. Yeah.
what are you doing? I couldn't believe when the ice cream shop opened up across from my parking lot. I guess ice cream is essential in Indiana, but I just immediately I sort of almost was like, why are they reopening? Right? We don't really need an ice cream cone right now.
Essential.
so that's the reality. Is some of us are going to open up too early. Some of us probably could open up earlier. I think we have to try to just watch and see as other people do it and they start to roll out who's doing it well, who has good policies, what are some of the procedures. We're going to have to check with our states and local governments to determine what we can and can't do. Ice cream never closed in LA. Yeah, I don't think ice cream shops had to close. He just did close. And then he reopened and it was like a huge deal, right? 200 people. I was like, how are they social distancing 200 people? So the last thing I would say for everyone, and I just keep encouraging people with this, is just try not to get overwhelmed and simplify the things you can figure out, right? I mean, there are probably a couple things you can do, and you're not going to be able to figure out all of these things. So just keep simple control over some of the things you can. You can communicate with your staff. You can find out what they're going to need. You can find out if and when they can come back to work. There are some simple things you can be doing. So don't overwhelm yourself with thinking you have to figure out every single thing.
I love it, and keep monitoring it. And I'm just so inspired by the three of you and all we've talked about and all the chats and like you said, Shannon, that we are all pulled, and Erica and Dan, you said it too. It's like we're all pulling together. We're all together on this. And this is another cliche that keeps being said. We're in this together, but really we're on the same page, and we love our clients, we love our students, and we love being able to help them. And we're now, we've now formulated different ways to work with them and help them. And so this is a challenging time, but we're learning more, like communicating more with your staff. Awesome. Things we probably should have already been doing. So there's a lot of good things that are going to come out of it. So let's all stay patient. Let's all stay strong. Let's all stay healthy. Let's all just, again, it's challenging, but the more positive and the more together, and I hate the back and forth that go on with Facebook, people arguing and calling each other idiots and all that kind of stuff. It's like, let's stay positive. That's who we are. That's who the fitness and wellness industry, we are positive human beings. And we make a difference, and we're going to continue to make a difference no matter what way we do it. So let's peace out on that. We'll get to some of those chats on our follow-up. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dan, Shannon, and Erica. And thank you, everybody else, for being on the call.